I'm not even going to diminish this film by suggesting, so James, do we feel it stands the test of time or not? Oh, it's
If
hanging in the balance there.
if any film from the 1940s or from the golden era of Hollywood has stood the test of time, it's Casablanca.
You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be.
Hello and welcome to the show. My name is James, joined as ever by my friend Steve, and this is Every Best Picture, where we are going through every winner of the Academy Award for Best Picture, starting from the very, very beginning, going right up to the present day. This episode, it's 1943's Casablanca.
Hey, but you know what you could do to help us? Subscribe would be a great favor to us. And hey, we do spoilers here at Deep Dive. But if you need a spoiler alert for a winner from 1943, it's a little late now. James, I've been waiting for this since we started this whole series of Every Best Picture. This is the movie that I've been waiting for. You know it. I've mentioned it in many of our reviews. My all-time favorite, best movie, bar none. It's never been topped in my eyes. And I watch it at least once a year, if not more.
Yeah, I mean, if there was ever a candidate for the perfect movie, the best movie ever made, whatever, I think one of the objectively true responses is always going to be Casablanca. It's just sort of the perfect studio film from the golden era. The stars, the cast is absolutely jam-packed. The stars are perfect. The plot is firing on all cylinders. It's exciting. It's witty. It's romantic. It's packed full of quotable lines that permeate our society to this day.
You'll owe me 10,000 francs.
And that 10,000 francs should pay our expenses.
Our expenses?
Mm-hmm.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
And, the music is incredible. The cinematography is just everything about this movie works.
Yeah, no, this is, I still remember the first time I was introduced to Casablanca. I was at a poker game around 1987, and we're talking about films. And this guy, I still remember this guy's name. I'm not in touch with this guy. His name was Patrick Vincent. It was just for a few years. I kind of knew the guy, his friend of a friend who played poker with him. He said, what's the best movie I've ever seen is Casablanca. And I went, really? He goes, oh, I watch it at least once a year. All-time favorite movie. I was so intrigued that somebody felt that passionate about Casablanca, and myself being a film lover, I thought, well, I should give it a look. And sure enough, I went to the video store, rented it, and I fell in love at that moment. Since that day, it has been my favorite movie, to the point where when I turned 50 6 years ago, we did a whole Casablanca. My wife did a whole Casablanca themed birthday evening for us. We rented the pool, the barbecue area, tons of friends. Everybody was in, not everybody, but we encouraged, black tie. I had my bow tie. We were showing Casablanca on the side with the sound down. And we had all this Casablanca memorabilia my wife had printed out and put all over the area. It was just that's how much this film has meant to me over the years.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, didn't there used to be a bar in Tsim Sha Tsui it was either called Casablanca's or it was called Rick's Cafe or something like that?
It was Rick's Cafe. Yeah, it was Rick's Cafe. I think it was more just the name. It really didn't
capture the spirit or the vibe.
No.
Of
when
Morocco.
You walked in, you didn't feel like you'd been to Rick's. There was no salmon there for sure.
Yeah, it was a different vibe they were going for. I've got to be honest, I don't really remember the first time I saw it. I was probably sort of early teens, or which was when I was really starting to just devour everything. But what I do remember is when I first came to Hong Kong in sort of the very early 2000s, and I was a school teacher for the first couple of years, and the school was up in mid-levels. I remember when IFC first opened, a big sort of mall and tower block down on the harbour front. And that was it. It was a new cinema, and they wanted to create a place that was sort of a bit of a bit of a classier cinema going experience. Right. And they launched by playing a whole load of like classic movies. They played Sound of Music, and they were playing Rebel Without a Cause, and they were playing a bunch of other stuff. And one of the movies that they were screening was for like a whole week or something was Casablanca. And at this time, I was teaching sort of English to a bunch of sort of 14-year-old international school students. And I managed to convince them and convince the school to let me take the class on a field trip literally down the hill, down the escalator, one afternoon to go see Casablanca. And a lot of the kids are like, wait, what? What are we going to see? We're going to go see some old black and white World War II movie. And I was like, trust me. And I remember we spent a whole lesson, great use of my time as a teacher. I spent a whole lesson beforehand, essentially mapping out the plot for them. I remember drawing a big map of Europe and just letting them know what they were in store for. And we went down and sitting there with, as you know, I get great pleasure from introducing movies that I love to other people, and taking down like sort of 15 young teenagers from all over Asia, sitting them down, and they're all kind of like, wait, what is that? I said, hey, it's better than school, right? Sitting down and watched it. And you know what? They all loved it. And the next day they came bouncing into class and all they wanted to talk about was the movie. And I was like, my work here is done. These kids who would probably never have bothered watching it otherwise saw it on the big screen, saw it with an audience, saw it together, and it really seemed to sort of hit home with them, and that was amazing. That's probably my favorite viewing experience of the movie.
That's fantastic, and it just shows you the impact that this film has across any demographic. It's a human story. It's a love story. It's a story set in wartime where there's a lot of desperation and desperate people involved. And we're seeing this batch of humanity thrown together in Casablanca. None of them really want to be there. All of them trying to make the best of the life that they can have. And in and amidst all of this, a romantic love triangle develops in and amidst the Nazis encroaching in on the whole party. And so what's not to love in this film?
Well, that's it. I mean, I don't care how old you are, where you come from. Everybody understands a love triangle, Everyone understands that unrequited love, or seeing the girl or the person that you have feelings for with somebody else. And, and it's just, the magic of the movie is your main character doing the right thing when he has never done the right thing, and he's been this very selfish, self-serving guy who sticks his neck out for nobody,
for no one.
And it's just like, it's so good. Eventually, sticking her on the plane with Victor Laszlo so that they can go off and win the war essentially. And he's just gonna do his little part with the chief of police in Morocco, and he knows his place. And it's just that idea of sacrifice, and you can package a sacrifice for the greater good if you want, but it's just personal sacrifice because he knows that it's the right decision for her. And
that's it. Well, I mean, to set the stage, Humphrey Bogart plays an American expat who owns a cafe in Casablanca, Morocco, and in and amidst the refugees that are pouring in from Europe to get away from Nazi Germany, in comes his former lover, played by Ingrid Bergman, Elsa, but in tow is her husband, and he thinks that she subsequently married him after they'd broken up, only to discover that they had been married even when they'd been together. But the story goes a little deeper than that. And of course, then the Nazis arrive and throw a whole nother wrench into the concoction.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then there is this kind of sort of almost like a sort of spy story going on. There are these letters of transit that have been stolen that, the local police are looking for. You've got Claude Rains as the local chief because it's a French colony.
That's right. Yes.
So the French are running it, and so you've got this French chief of police, but it's Vichy. It's kind of
free,
like
it's Free France. It's supposed to be Free France. Yeah, it's not Vichy France.
No, because there's that gag about the Vichy water that he throws away.
I think that's right.
So he's in the chief of police is in this difficult position where the Nazis are coming in and they're wanting him to work alongside them, but he has these relationships going on with all the little sort of players, including Rick and what have you, in the town. And so there's so much sort of underhand black market wheeler dealing going on, and you've got all of these sort of small little ancillary characters played by fantastic character actors that we've seen in playing opposite Humphrey Bogart in sort of Maltese Falcon. You've got Peter Lorre, Sidney Greenstreet, character actors like that who come on for like one or two scenes, but they just nail it. They absolutely steal the show. every time.
And you know what's great, James, is the dialogue is so pitch perfect in this film that even when these characters you just mentioned, Sidney Greenstreet or Peter Lorre, come in, they deliver lines that just knock it out of the park. They just, Sidney Greenstreet, is when he says, why I give you this information because it has no benefit to me. I have no idea, but I'm going to give it to he says it in such a way that is so brilliant. Or Peter Lorre, when he has his exchange with Humphrey Bogart at the beginning, and he goes, Rick, you don't think much of me, do you? And Humphrey Bogart just saying, well, if I gave you any thought, I suppose I wouldn't. Basically, exactly. I don't give you enough thought to even dislike you. Just these lines are just so perfect.
You despise me, don't you? Well, if I gave you any thought, I probably would.
Perfect. And just set up, they flesh out even these secondary characters in such a brilliant way. They're not there just as ornaments. So many movies would just use these different characters as side ornaments and focus purely on the love triangle. But it pauses occasionally to just flesh out these characters, give them some just superior dialogue. So you get this whole mosaic of what's going on in this environment at Rick's Cafe. It's just brilliant.
Well, that's it. It's like they've just taken the time to finesse those little details. It kind of reminds you, I was trying to think who does that these days. And you have to look at filmmakers like sort of the Coen brothers or even Wes Anderson, whose style I don't always get on with. But every single player, any character that has a line deserves to be respected as a fully fleshed human being,
Right.
And so these are filmmakers who also have the opportunity and the resources to cast those small characters with big name stars or certainly highly skilled character actors.
Yes, yeah.
And the same is true here. Just because Madeleine LeBeau, who plays Yvonne, who's kind of like Rick's girlfriend at the time that Ilsa shows up, isn't in it very much, and she just gets to do that brilliant sort of spurned, stroppy French woman kind of moment, and it's so wonderful, that everybody in it. And then you've obviously got Dooley Wilson as Sam, the piano player at the bar. Yeah, it's just... Who's if anybody is Rick's confidant, I suppose Sam is his confidant. Yeah. He knows, he's like the one guy who knows the backstory, isn't he?
Yeah.
He knows about the relationship.
And to show that level of friendship between a white man and a black man in 1942, 1943 was really forward thinking, because these, even though Rick's the boss, they are peers, and Sam can speak truth to this guy. And I think that's another element in this film that just sets it apart.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it just speaks to how every little detail in this movie has been thought about very carefully, and pre-planned and finessed, so that there isn't a weak link in the movie. Yeah, there isn't a bum note. There isn't. I mean, if there's one thing that kind of is amusing, which is kind of like the entire conceit, the entire idea that all these refugees are flooding down all the way through Europe to this little enclave in Morocco in order to seek safe passage to America. That didn't happen, as far as I understand. That's not a thing, and it's a pretty ludicrous idea, really, if you put it into sort of real world terms. As far as I understand, that could not, would not, and did not happen that way.
Right.
But
weren't they trying to get to Lisbon? Wasn't the whole point of going from Casablanca to get to Lisbon and then maybe on to America? But they were getting passage to Lisbon, like those letters of transit. They were on a plane they were going to Portugal. Yeah,
you remember
Portugal was a neutral country.
A neutral country, right? But I think this roundabout route is, I think, has been sort of debunked. I believe by respected historians. This is like, no, that's a silly way of going there.
I do love this, and you and I being in expat communities, I love films that feature expat communities. Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson did a miniseries back in the 90s called it's like that 1990s miniseries that Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson were in, called Fortunes of War. And it follows this expat community that keeps moving as the Nazis, every time the Nazis are closing in, they move to a new safe space. And they really try to recreate their expat lifestyle in whatever new place that they're at. And Casablanca has a measure of that, because despite everybody kind of complaining and bitching, they're actually having a good time. People are drinking martinis and they're gambling, and they're, there's people are in ties and dinner jackets. And so there's still a bit of patrician excess, and amidst all this talk about war and chaos being all around.
Yeah, that's one element of it that I do see reflected in somewhere like Hong Kong is you're in the bubble, and all around you there might be sort of chaos and hostile forces and what have you going on and moving around, but there
got to watch out for those hostile forces. They're all around.
This is it. But yeah, it is a little sort of escapist commune, if you like, and it was just one of those sort of films that there was a lot of these kind of films in the 1940s, that are kind of film noir in their aesthetic. A lot of them using these sort of German expressionist filmmakers and cinematographers who had escaped Germany, before the war to come to Hollywood and make their movies. Which obviously had a massive impact on the style of movies of this period. But there was but in terms of the narrative, there were a lot of stories about sort of expats and about sort of Americans being displaced in little pockets around the world. And I too am a sucker for those. I mean, films like obviously Casablanca, Gilda is another one. Only Angels Have Wings is another. It's a brilliant one. Just in these tiny little kind of exotic locales. They're all shot on sound stages in Burbank. But just this sort of the exoticism of it, and then there's you're kind of just haggard, world weary American kind of guy, anti-hero who sort of wanders in and inevitably gets involved with the wrong people and has to kind of kill someone. There's a femme fatale and all the rest of it. Those kind of movies I'm just an absolute sucker for.
I think we also have to mention, like our previous Best Picture winner, Mrs. Miniver, which was also about World War II. This film was talking about the impact of Nazi Germany at a time where the outcome was not yet a foregone conclusion. The war was still very much going at this point. And so those elements you see throughout the film, like what side are you going to be on, Rick? This is very real, and you can't just be for yourself. You got to be for the bigger picture. And so there's a message that's aimed not just at Humphrey Bogart, the American, but you can see it's aimed at all America. Come on, the world's at war. We need America to pick a side. And I think by this time we'd actually, because of Pearl Harbor, had gotten involved, but there had been such a reticence by the Americans to get involved beforehand that you could see there's this overriding meta narrative or message that says, come on, America, it basically funneled down to a single person in Humphrey Bogart's Rick.
Absolutely.
Make the right choice and get with the plan.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he is America, and he's sitting there in his little, in his little enclave going, I stick my neck out for no one. It's like, well, you need to, literally all the powers of the world are circling and coming to him for help, going, help. Pick a side, get on board. We need you to sort this out.
And there's all that brilliant foreshadowing too, because even though he's saying all that, I stick my head out for nobody, and he's developed a reputation that I'm not going to do anything for anybody that's going to get me in trouble. Of course, when the couple's in trouble and they need to get out, and the girl's willing to kind of sell herself, it's done so diplomatically how she's explaining what she's going to do to Claude Rains' Inspector Renault. Basically, Inspector Renault's got a little side business where he gives letters of transit himself for a little evening, and Rick allowing the husband to win at the roulette table.
I said 22.
Marquons les jeux, mesdames et messieurs. Les jeux sont faits, la partie continue. Marquons les jeux. Fini. 22. Noir, pair et passe. 22.
Leave it there.
And just the whole thing, now take your winnings and get the hell out of here. I never want to see you again, and essentially it's that whole foreshadowing of this complex character who's been hurt. He's been, as we subsequently had to find out, because of giving his heart once to somebody, he's never going to give his heart again, but he can't help himself because he just has the heart of gold.
It is. I mean, at the end of the day, this is about America. This story about America reluctantly, begrudgingly doing the right thing, and getting involved. And but it's done on a sort of person to person basis, which makes it so
Isn't
much
it
more...
Winston Churchill that said we can always count on America to make the right choice after it's exhausted all the other alternatives?
That does sound like something Winston Churchill would say for sure.
Yeah.
But there are other sort of great moments of sort of, sort of breast beating propaganda. There's the moment where the German high command come into Rick's and start singing the German national anthem. So immediately Henreid, Victor Laszlo runs over to the band and goes, "Play the Marseillaise, yes." And they start singing the Marseillaise louder and louder and louder, and eventually they sort of win out, and the German high command sort of have to sort of slink away. And there are moments in it like that where you're like, yeah, it was really kind of game on, and everybody, it really, and again, hammers home that World War II was a war that involved everybody. It wasn't just a sort of a military war. No. It involved kind of absolutely everybody, wherever you were, really. Yeah. The war was happening sort of in that bar, on that street,
I've seen that film, as I've indicated, more times than I can count. And every time they sing that song in the bar, I get goose flesh. It is so inspiring because it goes beyond just yes, there's a level of jingoistic propaganda, but I think it even goes much beyond that. This isn't just about France and the West. The Nazis represent evil, and the West may be hypocritical at times. They may espouse values that they often don't live up to. But in that moment, in that movie, this is good and evil personified, and you can't help but feel it at that moment.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. And it's, and it's one of the moments where it is very, very clearly defined about which is the right decision to make, which is the right, man to pick, if you like, which obviously is the difficult question that Ilsa is wrestling with in the movie, because there are two good men who in her life, and she has a far more difficult decision to make about which one, because juxtaposed by this sort of very, very sort of binary choice of like good and evil in the background, and that just again just adds layers to the movie. It's just what makes it so rich. It is a heartbreaking romance at the end of the day, and Ingrid Bergman is just she glows in that. Yeah. They always talk about, they used to put like wax on the lens to make the action. I mean, this movie, she's absolutely just like sort of radiant in this movie, and heartbreaking at the same time. And you totally get it. You're just like, men would lie down in traffic for her gladly.
Well, that's why you have two men of this caliber that are madly in love with her. And what makes this love triangle so brilliant is a lot of times when love triangles are played out, or when they're trying to get the married woman to go off with the other guy, they really play the married guy as just being, brutal or slaps her around. Or there's none of this. Both of these guys are A+ gentlemen, to the point where Paul Henreid, Victor Laszlo, loves his wife so much that he tells Rick to use the 2 letters of transit to take his wife away. And that's the clincher for Humphrey Bogart. Like, what that means, right? He goes, I love her that much. And it's like in that moment, Humphrey Bogart's already got his alternative plan set in motion. You have to get on that plane with Victor Laszlo. I mean, it has probably the most brilliant ending in any film. It's quoted. It's just, without a doubt. It's the perfect film.
Obviously, Casablanca did win Best Picture this was at the 1944 ceremony, where it did win Best Picture. It also won Best Director for Michael Curtiz, and Best Original Screenplay for Julius Epstein, Philip Epstein, and Howard Koch. It was nominated for, among others, for Best Actor for Humphrey Bogart, but it was going to be a few years before he eventually won for The African Queen. And Claude Rains got a Best Supporting Actor nomination, although didn't win. I always like to just see what it beat out.
I have all that in front of me right now, and the funny thing is, other than Heaven Can Wait, or For Whom the Bells Toll, I think I've only seen Heaven Can Wait of everything that's on here. It has For Whom the Bell Tolls, Heaven Can Wait, The Human Comedy in Which We Serve, Madame Curie, The More the Merrier, The Oxbow Incident, The Song of Bernadette, and Watch on the Rhine. most of these I've never even heard of before.
Well, For Whom the Bell Tolls obviously is a adaptation of Ernest Hemingway story, but I don't think I've seen
Right,
the
that's
movie.
that one. Yeah, that's the only one. That and Heaven Can Wait are the only ones I really know.
Okay, I also have seen In Which We Serve, which is a war movie starring Richard Attenborough, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, David Lean and Noel Coward directed it. And it stars Richard Attenborough, a young Richard Attenborough, and it's a good one. It is a good sort of stirring, again, sort of World War II propaganda kind of movie, but from the British point of view. But it's no Casablanca, let's be honest.
Right. I can't imagine Humphrey Bogart not winning the Best Actor for this, because I mean, and he's great in African Queen, but this is his quintessential role. He is Rick.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was interesting to see he was up against Walter Pidgeon again. That guy was on a roll. That guy's been nominated every year for the last sort of 3 or 4 years. But yeah, no, so he lost out to Paul Lucas for Watch on the Rhine. It's a movie with Betty Davis that I don't even know. I've got no idea what that movie
is. Yeah.
I don't think I even know who Paul Lucas is.
It just shows you how the moment in time can be so different than what history kind of. We've had these discussions before about why does often the film that wins the Oscar, not the one that is remembered 20, 30 years later, and often ones that they lost out to. Obviously not in this case. Casablanca far and away is the one that we remember, despite, any of the nominations.
That's right, and rightly so. I've seen a couple of those other ones, and they're good, but they're no Casablanca. This was one of those years when they got it right. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not even going to diminish this film by suggesting, so James, do we feel it stands the test of time or not? Oh, it's hanging in the balance there,
If any film from the 1940s or from the golden era of Hollywood has stood the test of time, it's Casablanca.
Yeah. It's just talking about it with this much level of gushing has made me want to go and watch it again. But I feel I need to share it with somebody. I got to find somebody who hasn't seen it yet.
Have your kids seen it yet?
I know Gabriel has. Almond. Have you ever seen Casablanca? You think?
That means no.
That means no. If you're home this afternoon, I know what we're doing.
I'm out. Well, I hope she.
Any final? Yeah. I hope. If not, I will set her down. And she's watched RRR. And what was the Clark Gable movie that we watched?
It Happened One Night.
It Happened One Night. Yes, she loved that one. She's
going to love Casablanca. I think people do. They might be, initially reluctant to sit down and watch a 70-odd-year-old movie purely on principle, but it's just one of those movies that just totally works.
Yeah, it got universal acceptance. I mean, have you ever met anybody who watched that movie and didn't like it? I mean, nearly every movie, there's going to be somebody who doesn't like it. I don't know anybody that comes out of Casablanca and goes, it's just not that kind of film.
Well, you know what? I think that's what we have to ask our viewers. It's like, if you're out there and you don't like Casablanca, step up, be brave. Let us know in the comments. We'll look after you. But I am fascinated. I'm fascinated to know why and to hear your criticisms of the movie, because as is plainly obvious by what we've been saying, I think I speak for both of us when we see it as a flawless, perfect movie. And so if anyone out there feels otherwise, I would love to know why. And not in an antagonistic way. I'm just curious to see it from a different perspective.
Well, that's James and I's gushing about the Oscar winner from 1943. 42?
43, yeah.
43. The Oscar winner from 1943. We'd love to hear what you have to say, as James said, in the box below. Otherwise, James, anything else?
Well, we'll always have Paris.
We'll always have. And I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Nice.
That's the way to end it. Until next episode.
Bye-bye.
You're wonderful.
Bye.